So we're lucky here in the South. We have a lot of leafy evergreen shrubs that we can use in our gardens to keep the garden, have something in the garden that looks the same year round. I think that's, you know, kind of important overall. You know, when I'm doing landscape consultations, frequently I'm pointing out that I kind of like the envelope of the house to stay the same year round, but then other things that lose their leaves that are interesting, you know, outside of that particular area. And again, here in the South, we have a lot of leafy evergreens, but that doesn't make me any less of what Dr. Reuter, who I heard give a talk up in Columbus, Ohio last week, would call a conehead, a person who loves conifers. And we have a lot of conifers in the Raleigh garden here. I've got my Conifer Crew t-shirt on here. If you're interested, it's over on the website, HortTube.com. But we use conifers for all different types of reasons out here in the garden. So here's a boulevard cypress, which I'll talk about in just a second, which is obviously an upright, narrow conifer with blue foliage. But we can use conifers as ground covers. We can use them as mid-sized shrubs. We can use them in the shade. We can use them in the sun. We can use them. Some are drought tolerant. Some are less so. And probably shouldn't be, you know, should be watered more often. We'll talk about that as we go, because they're kind of hard to figure out when they need water. Of course, we can have blue foliage, gold, chartreuse foliage, you know, just coloration out in the tips. We can get variegation in some of these conifers, and we'll show you one of those coming up as well. And then, of course, tall, narrow pieces that we can use for the sides of our you know, on the edges of our houses, or screening plants, which people do, lots of green giant arborvitae kind of plantings out in the world. So they're just so daggone useful. And then winter happens and they're the most interesting thing in the garden. So that's one of the main draws of them. This is a boulevard cypress, Chamaecyparis piscifera. This one in about 10 years or so. I guess this one's been in the ground for about 3 years in this spot. It was in a container for a year before that. Is now, you know, I'm 6 feet tall, so it's maybe 5.5 at this point, somewhere in that neighborhood. It's got a big spider web here. I don't know if it will show up in the camera or not. I'm not going to bother, you know, I'm not going to bother that spider that did all that hard work overnight and not bothering anything out here. So in about 10 years, you know, I would expect this thing to be in the 8 to 10 foot range, something like that, as long as it's happy in the space that it's in. Eventually, you can see how full this one is now. We've got it behind this little low fence, so it's just a backdrop here. We've got some gomphrena that we grow from seed that kind of grows around it during the season. We do keep the annuals off of it so that it doesn't, they don't damage it, because this is a temporary plant and this is kind of more of a permanent plant. But this one, in time, will open up a bit. So when they're small, they tend to be full like this. Super soft to the touch, by the way. Really love this plant. It'll open up in the future. You'll see a bit more of the bark, and it has this red exfoliating bark that's quite striking. Keeps this blue foliage like this. There are some smaller growing versions of boulevard cypress. We've shown off on the channel in the past, but this is the larger growing version. The ones that Ram Giberson has down in the garden in Athens, Georgia, are now 20 feet tall. And again, they're like telephone poles. You know, the middle part of the tree is like this, and it has that beautiful red exfoliating bark, and the limbs are kind of separated a bit as they go up. And they're really very striking in her garden. She has them in a little bit more shade so she's not getting as much of this blue as we're getting. This plant is in the morning shade, but it's probably getting 7 or 8 hours of direct sun later in the day. One little quick thing real quick. These gomphrena are kind of being used to protect the roots on this plant. Some of these conifers don't like it in the south as much. This one's hardy in up to zone 4, so it would prefer to be in slightly colder areas than our zone 8 Raleigh garden with 100-degree temperatures this week. But these things, the fence and the few annual plants we have planted around it, plus the mulch, are helping protect those roots, keep those roots cool, and keep it looking this fresh in the middle of July. So here's an example of what I'm talking about, where we do plant these annuals out here for the pollinators, and we're hoping that lots of things can take advantage of that, but we're also making sure that they're not going to hurt our permanent plants at the same time. So I'll go through here and cut back some of this salvia that has invaded this Taxus baccata, and this is there's a weed. You'll find a weed at the same time. You'll always find a weed hiding in your annuals somewhere. Okay, now we've done that. So this is a variegated Taxus baccata, Oreo marginatus. It's got a, it's yellow, it's green in the middle with kind of a yellowish margin on the outside. This is another one. It's pretty hot here in the southeast United States for this plant. This one was from cuttings, I think, from Dan Hinckley out on the West Coast, and we're going to visit Dan at some point. We were thinking about it later this year, but our paths are unfortunately not overlapping correctly. He's going to be somewhere else when we're in his area in the Pacific Northwest, but we'll get up to him at some point. He is one of the great plantsmen, in the United States for sure. I saw lots of Taxus baccata in Germany and in Europe in general. And the regular green Taxus baccata can get big, 15 feet tall at the Berlin Botanic Garden. So they can take up quite a bit of space. This variegated version is much slower growing than that. And there is a fastigiate version of this, I'm told as well, that I have not actually seen of the variegated one. But this one's much slower growing. Again, it's in a lot of sun out here in the front garden. Most conifers need sun, with some exceptions, Sephilotaxis being one. We may show Sephilotaxis in this video, don't know yet. So most of them need sun, but that's a delicate balance here for us, because if it's one of the conifers, there are southern conifers, and we'll talk more about that. Next conifer we're going to talk about is one that will take the heat. This one would prefer to have its roots shaded a little bit as well, so having this little bit of chaos around it during the summer as it's getting itself established and getting big enough to kind of protect its own roots, that's a good thing. Soft to the touch, which I really like. I mean, I grew and planted so many conifers in my life that I'm kind of over being stabbed by them. So any of these ones, I'll always point out, like that Boulevard cypress over there, or this Taxus baccata, it's soft. It's kind of nice to be able to work around it and not have to worry about that. But I really love this plant. It's beautiful. Taxus an actual yew that we can grow here, but again, it requires a tad bit of protection. I think as this thing gets bigger, and with this variegation that's in it, it's going to really be a statement piece out here in the front garden. So this is a conifer that will take the heat in the southeast United States. This is a Cryptoaria japonica. We have Cryptoaria that are 1 foot tall in the garden after 4 years, in the back garden back there. And then there's Cryptoaria like Yoshino Cryptoaria that'll get 75 feet tall. And so there's a wide range of Cryptoaria out in the world. Highly recommend them for our southern gardens, and even into zone 6. They were damaged over on the Tennessee side when that big sudden freeze happened about 3 years ago. I may be off on my dates at this point, but there was a lot of the Cryptoaria back over toward Nashville, Tennessee, actually got damaged from sudden freezes where they still had a lot of moisture in the main stems, and they actually cracked and had issues. But certainly on this side of the mountains and down into all of the southeast, these Cryptoaria are fantastic for screening. They're fantastic for being little container plants. Pretty much anything you want to do with them. They're really easy plants. This one you're probably not going to be able to find. It's called Limeade. I got it in a rare plant auction a few years ago. There's one over at the Ralston, and there's one here, and I don't know where any others are. I'm sure a couple other people have them, but I don't really know. There's one called Lemonade that's similar that you could find. This one's probably going to get more like in the 10-15 foot range. Again, these conifers are nothing else in your garden is going to read the tags. It's going to continue to grow in time. I could be shearing this into more of a Christmas tree shape, but it has kind of this wide Kool-Aid Man style growth on it. It's more what it has right now, and I'm probably just going to leave it like that. It's called Limeade because in the spring especially, it has kind of a chartreuse new growth on it, so it's very colorful when it's earlier in the season before the heat really starts kicking in and turns it more of a greenish color. But I like this one. Pretty much any Cryptoaria japonica that fits the space that you want to grow it in, you can add to your garden and really enjoy. And here's what the cones look like on them. Always interested on conifers, because you'll get some tiny conifers that will produce these giant cones, and then you'll get giant conifers that will produce little minuscule cones. That's always an interesting thing to me, that, you know, it's just, you know, how you know, whatever that evolution is that decided, you know, I'm going to make a cone this big, or I'm going to make a cone, you know, this big. Kind of interesting. But I do, again, Cryptoaria should be at the top of your list if you're in the southeast and you want to add conifers to your garden. I don't know if we've shown off the monkey puzzle tree in any of the videos that we've done. We've got this when we were down visiting historic Columbia a couple of years ago now, and it was a tiny little thing at that time. This year it's got to growing. It's probably grown a foot and a half this year. The trunk is starting to get some width on it. These are native to Chile. I think it's the national tree of Chile, which is kind of interesting. It would prefer a kind of coastal fog place that doesn't get extremely cold, you know, and that fits the Pacific Northwest certainly better than it does our area here in the southeast, but we can definitely grow them here. You'll see they're hardy from zone 7 to 10. It's probably more like 7B to 10. The one over at the Ralston has definitely, the top has been killed back a few times over the years, and it's made it a much wider tree. What an interesting plant. It is a pokey thing. It will definitely, it's armed pretty well. But I love this plant. When you see these as larger specimens, they're so architectural. You can see each layer, you know, it's basically layered on layered on layered as it gets, you know, as it grows. It's armed even along the trunk. There's leaves that are, you know, spiky leaves even along the trunk. But I think it's one of the prettier trees. You know, when we go out into the west and you see these much larger down in Florida, you know, you'll see quite a few of them as well. Again, the occasional one around the Raleigh area. We seem to have found the spot this thing really, really likes, and it's grown quite a bit. I don't know what we'll do with this thing in the future. Obviously, I can't let it get, you know, 20 feet tall in the spot it's sitting right now, but we'll enjoy it in the meantime. This is a Picea orientalis called Nigra Compacta, a really rich dark green foliage. This is another one that's hardy, like zone 4 to 7, in parentheses 8, which the 8 that I'm talking about is probably the Pacific Northwest and not necessarily the zone 8 Raleigh, North Carolina garden. So typically this is going to need full sun wherever you're trying to grow it. It's this really cool soft textured conifer. Love this plant, really this rich dark green color. Again, it's going to need full sun pretty much for everybody, but we have it in some little bit of shade. We've got it growing underneath a tree formed Indian hawthorn above it, and it's absolutely thriving out here in the front garden. Got a sedum growing around its roots and some other perennials growing around it as well, and that seems to protect the roots enough on it that it's perfectly happy out here in our heat and humidity overall. It's grown quite a bit over the last couple of years. It was a tiny little thing when it went in the ground, and I would expect this in an area that it actually wants to be in to be somewhere in like the 8 to 10 foot range, 8 foot range, let's say in 10 years, something like that. You can make it a really formal Christmas tree if you want to. That's kind of how its natural growth habit's going to be. Although this one is developing a couple of leaders on it. I don't really mind one way or the other. A couple of points on all these conifers. It's really hard to tell when one of these is dry. When this Indian hawthorn that's above it, this leafy evergreen, is dry, it's going to lose some interior foliage. I'm going to see it get some. This one has red. The leaves are red underneath this green, and so it's going to, all of a sudden I'm going to see some red leaves in there dropping off, right? Or I'm going to see it actually go into some sort of wilt. You know, some leafy evergreens will wilt like this, some will lose a little bit of interior foliage, some will just, you can kind of pick up on the look of a dry leafy evergreen shrub, or even deciduous shrubs. These conifers aren't great at telling you, unless you're staring at them every day, you're probably not going to notice they're dry. So keeping the area around them evenly moist is important, because here's the issue. This leafy evergreen Indian hawthorn, if I let it get dry and it loses a few leaves, I can simply come in here and prune this thing back, and that will force new growth in the interior pretty quickly. especially on an established plant like this. If this conifer starts to thin out in the middle and starts to look rough, it may take me 2 or 3 years to fully recover from it. So it's good to have these things not wet, but making sure that they're near the top of your list of rescuing. You know, when it's abnormally dry outside, I'm putting the conifers near the top of the list for watering first, because they're not going to tell you. The other things are at least going to give you some heads up and go into some sort of stasis where they can kind of hold on to themselves a bit for a moment. If you damage these are going to recover slowly. This is a conifer that really probably doesn't fit our garden overall, and we'll eventually have to make way. We'll end up probably giving it away or something like that. It looks super docile right now, as it's almost acting as a ground cover, but this is a blue Cunninghamia, or Chinese fir. These can get 70 feet tall, 50 to 70 feet tall. There are green, mostly green Cunninghamia around the neighborhood that are, you know, as tall as 40 to 50 feet tall, something like that. They do tend to colonize a bit in the spaces that they're in the neighborhood. So we'll notice that you'll have one, and then over time it just, you know, appears to be a bit of a, it's not aggressive spreading itself around the neighborhood or anything, but in the spot that they were originally planted, they get a little bit of a, they have a habit of taking that space. This is the blue version of it, Glauca. And we saw one, probably the largest one we've seen in a garden was down at Piccadilly Farms down in Athens, Georgia, a very old blue Cunninghamia that was probably in the 50-foot range. We filmed it in a video. I don't know that we talked about it in that Piccadilly video, but we certainly would have shown it in the footage walking around. I think part of that video includes walking around and just showing off some of the old plantings there. It's an interesting place to go and visit because it's second generation garden, a garden center garden or nursery garden, and a lot of the plants are very mature, which is kind of nice to go and see. You know, what will it actually do in the future? Because again, I say all the time, the plants don't read the tags, but this blue Cunninghamia is interesting. It's right now, it's just a little ground cover. It'll eventually, one of these, I could make a leader now, or we could wait for a new leader to form, but eventually this thing, it will outgrow this space. But in the meantime, it's beautiful blue, and really, again, one of those plants I really like. I've always really liked Cunninghamia. Out in the garden spaces. It's one to, you know, but gets big in time. We know how big green giant arborvitae can get and how fast they can get there. There is a lot of selecting going on amongst the green giant arborvitae for slightly smaller growth habits. Okay, I know that Adcock's Nursery has one, and I think that one's going to be in the Johnston County Nurserymen Association, so most of the North Carolina garden centers will end up with it. I can't remember the name of it right this minute. That's a selection. This is Buddy Lee's selection, who invented Encore Azaleas. This one's called Green Valley, and it's a very full, compact grower. It looks every bit like a green giant arborvitae, but the leaf internodes are a little closer together. So that's what you're kind of selecting for, you know, the gaps. If you notice the growth on green giants, you might get 2 or 3 feet of growth in this main leader in a season, and you'll notice how far these branches are apart from one another. They can go 6 inches apart, you know, on a regular green giant. These leaf internodes are much closer together, which is keeping it more compact, and it's also slowing it down a bit. So it's still going to grow fast though. This thing has probably doubled in height this year. Well, maybe not quite doubled in height this year, but close to it. So it's still going to grow pretty fast, but it has a really full compact habit. It still has that soft to the touch thing that people like about green giant. It's still going to screen, make your neighbor go away, which is what people are planting green giants for, right? To, you know, have some privacy in their gardens. But I think this one's going to be pretty popular, you know, in the future, because you don't necessarily need this plant to get 50 or 60 feet tall to get the job done. You know, if it only gets 20 feet tall in that same amount of time, or 25 feet tall, that's going to be perfect for most people. This is a dwarf Colorado blue spruce, and they're, you know, you'll see the hardiness on these Colorado blue spruce as zone 2 to 7, and then there'll be 8 in parentheses. And the 8 they're talking about is not Raleigh, North Carolina. Although lots of us do try to grow Colorado blue spruce here. There, you know, you'll find the occasional one that looks really terrific around Raleigh, but not many. You can probably count them on two hands, you know, all your fingers and toes. The really nice ones around the city. We've actually had this one in this spot for 5 years. This is a dwarf compact version of it. And here we are in midsummer, and because I have it in some shade, you're not seeing as much blue as you would normally see on a Colorado blue spruce. Early in the season, you know, very early in the season, it was as blue can be. But I have it in some afternoon shade here and some morning shade, really. It's protected in every way I can protect it in order to keep it, you know, from succumbing to our 100-degree temperatures. We have another week this week of 100-degree temperatures. I think you can hear some construction in the background right now on my microphone. Sorry about that. A neighbor is getting some construction done. But this plant, with this incredible compact habit, is definitely worth having here in the Raleigh garden. But again, it's going to require some protection like this. In the spring, it's everything a Colorado blue spruce should be. And in the summer, not so much. It's got, you know, it's off color just a little bit, but it still looks good. And I get asked frequently how our Colorado blue spruce is doing here in the garden, and it's doing fine. But it definitely has its fluctuations during the growing season. We've had several 100-degree days this season, and it's just, you know, the heat and humidity combined together. This is one particular conifer that would probably rather me package it up and send it to someone in Connecticut or New Hampshire or something like that. This is a Sephilotaxis. This one is a low-growing Sephilotaxis. Sephilotaxis just means you like, so taxis being you. The interesting thing about Sephilotaxis is the deer don't eat them, but you know, a lot of ewes they do in fact eat. And when we go up to the northeast, we can see some of the designs that the deer can make out of ewes up there. But we use Sephilotaxis here in the south, and they're incredibly shade and drought tolerant. And you're not going to say that about many conifers, but when we see really beautiful shade gardens here in the south, almost across the board, we're going to see some sort of Sephilotaxis. This one's called Fritz Huber, ground cover one. There are, you know, probably gets, you know, it'll creep up to about 1 foot tall over time, get as wide as we want to ultimately let it get. We have other ones here in the garden. We have Utopia plum yew or Sephilotaxis, and it gets more like 3 feet tall. There are Duke gardens that gets 3 to 4 feet tall, and then even the fastigiate varieties that get as tall as you want to let them get. So this is a plant you can select in whatever size growth habit or whatever growth habit you want. It has this beautiful, super fine textured, looks prickly, but it's not. Really easy to maintain. These are going to be expensive to buy. Some of these conifers, a lot of these conifers. So I just showed you a blue spruce that's very slow growing. You know, a dwarf blue spruce. You're going to spend some money for that plant because it took a long time in the nursery. It's the same thing with these Sephilotaxis. To root one of these takes almost a year. I can root them in a few months, get one little stringy root on it, but in order to root it well, it takes upwards of six months to a year in the tray, and then a year in a gallon container, and at least another year in a 3-gallon container. So you're looking at a plant where I could take this Akuba and probably in 24 to 30 months finish a beautiful 3-gallon Akuba. It may take me 3 to 4 years to finish that. So you're going to see it. It's going to cost you a few more dollars, but there's a reason for it. It takes a long time. But that plant that's so, you know, slow to establish itself in the nursery is also one that you're hardly ever going to have to maintain in the garden. So as this thing creeps to places I don't want it to creep, I'll cut it once a year, and that's it. Other than that, I just don't have to worry about this plant. So it's worth the extra money for the low maintenance that it has. Here's the Podocarpus. If you're following along with the channel, we showed one called Roman Candle in a video just the other day that has white new foliage on it. This one is called Mood Ring. And the reason for that is it changes colors kind of throughout the season. We're in the middle summer stage, so it's all green, but when it was actively growing in the spring, it leaves out kind of pink, has a pink coloration to it, slightly some burgundy hues, some pink hues, and then it settles into this green color during the season. Really, really like this plant. It's super, super interesting. You can see its upright growth habit. initially had this plant in too much shade. It will take part shade without any problem. We had it on the other side of this space and it was getting too much shade and it was stretching out. So it grew 3 feet and I'd have to cut most of that growth off because it was just wispy and thin. We moved it over here and now it's established itself really nicely. It's got a nice center kind of trunk on it. We're shearing it. You can see how narrow the growth habit is on these upright podocarpus like this, which make them perfect screening plants if you have a narrow lot. So our type of, if I was trying to make some sort of screen around a patio or I had a really close up neighbor and I just didn't have a lot of ground space to work with, if you're in the South, this is a great plant to use. This is a southern conifer. So I've tried in this video to show a lot of different, some very southern conifers, some very northern conifers, just to show kind of the overlap, where in this Raleigh garden we'll try pretty much anything. But this one, definitely, if you're in the South, fantastic conifer to use. Mackey is probably the most common of these upright podocarpus you're going to see, and it's, you know, widely available, widely sold. And if you go to places in Savannah, Charleston, southern spaces where the houses are pretty close together in old neighborhoods, this is probably the main go-to screening plant overall. But I do like Mood Ring because it throws in this extra bonus of a few months in the year. It's super, super colorful. So we're gonna go ahead and wrap this video up. We've got all kinds of construction noise going on in the neighborhood in three different locations, now. But so tell me down below, what, you know, do you have a go-to conifer? What's the favorite conifer in your garden? We love them. We could, again, we're in a place, you know, this Juliet Claera that I have next to me, this Chinese viburnum that I have up above me that's kind of semi-evergreen, this Osmanthus fragrans that's fully evergreen to the right of that. I got a boxwood down below. We have so many leafy evergreens that we can use here in the South. Of course, you can use the boxwood in the North as well, but we have so many leafy evergreens that we can go with here that we don't necessarily have to lean on conifers all that much like you would in more northern areas. But for us, we just love them because they're so, the blues and the yellows and the greens and the different habits of them, and then they become the stars of the winter garden. So we just love them. Let us know down below what's your favorite one. Thanks for watching.